or providing. Oh,
Sorry, that was me.
okay, that's all right. To end users, so members of the public for planting in their garden, school groups for planting in a school, woodland areas that are just going for community use. Okay, so again, it's a very broad remit. Right, but if we get a bit more specific, in 2019, and some new legislation was introduced, which came under the title as SRSF. This was actually when I was employed to introduce this legislation, or to encourage people and work with people under this new legislation, the Smarter Rules for Safer Food. And part of this introduced new pest and disease control measures. And within this, you may have heard the term plant passporting. So I'll explain a little bit more about what that means. So who should plant passport? So it can be the professional operator. They're already registered, but if they're not providing straight to the end user, they may be supplying plants through retailers for sale, or certainly through retailers. So that's one way. If you're not selling directly but via somebody else, you need to plant passport. Or the second one is anyone selling via the internet. And again, all plants sold on the internet and certain seeds. So just to emphasize again, face-to-face sales do not require plant passport. And this includes click and collect, that also doesn't require plant passporting. But anyone selling or providing plants in another way does need to do that. So the plant passporting scheme has got two pillars. Basically, we look at the traceability of the plants. So we ask for records of plant source through to sale to be kept for at least 3 years. And the assurance. And this is that all the plants meet the British plant health standards. Right, let's have a little look at the format of a plant passport. Some of you will probably be familiar with this, and if you're not, have a wander around a garden centre or somewhere and just see what you can find with a plant passport on. They don't all have to, and I'll explain when we get to the bottom of this. But basically, for England and Wales, it needs to say UK plant passport. And then there are A, B, C, D, where A is the botanical name of the plant. B would be your personal plant passporting number. And that one actually in the image that says GB, that's a carryover from the EU system. We now just look for the number because we know that you're all registered as UK users. C is a traceability code, which gives you, the provider, some information about the source of that tree or plant. And D is not UK because Northern Ireland are not included in this scheme, so it's GB. So sometimes you see the plant passports attached and sometimes you don't. And that is because the plant passport has to be attached to the smallest saleable unit. So it can be one plant pot, if that's all that's going for sale, or it can be attached to a tray of plants, a trolley of plants, or a pallet of plants. But what must happen is that you, as the provider, needs to attach it to that smallest saleable unit to the customer. Okay. So with plant passporting, there are charges. So I say registration, nothing. With registration, we'll do surveillance visits, no costs. But with plant passporting, because there are more control measures, and this is legislative again, there are charges. So, and I'd like to say that some of these costs are about to increase by about 20%. So bear that in mind. I think they're going to increase them over a year or so gradually, but just bear this in mind. So the minimum that we can charge you for is half an hour. And at the moment, that's £123.16. And we have to, on an annual basis, carry out a growing season inspection. This is only for host plants of quarantine pests and diseases. So just to tell you, particularly if you're involved in trees, some of those host plants of quarantine pests and diseases include trees like Malus, Mesophilus, Pyrus, Prunus, Chamaecyparis, and Quercus. Again, that may or may not alter depending on what the next threat of the pest or disease may be, but that's how it is at the moment. So I have to see those plants that you are going to sell or give away once a year. And I also have to come and do an annual records assessment where I look at where the source of the plants, trees came from. Again, we record the health through the growing season inspection, and then we look at the sales and where they've gone. So if there was any potential problem with those plants, you could do a recall, or if we got involved, if it became very serious, that there were good records where you could identify where all the plants of that batch were sold to. Having said all that, for small businesses like your own, we do try and keep the costs down. And working in West Wales, I've got a lot of small businesses, a lot of small tree nurseries. So I do try and keep the visits to the 30 minutes. I'll do a growing season inspection, but I'll also do a surveillance, so I can allocate some of my time to the surveillance, and then I'll do the annual records assessment. So at the moment, I'll try and do the key things in 30 minutes. And then if I'm with you for longer or you wish to talk, I can allocate the time elsewhere. So we're not too expensive. We are going to go a little bit more pricey, but just to reassure you, it's not a huge cost. So there is, if I made the paper application for plant passporting, there's a fee of £20.66 for that. But you can actually all apply for plant passporting yourself online using our system called eDomero, which I have to confess is very antiquated and gives clients a lot of hassle. But we are tending to upgrade our computer systems now to Microsoft. So I think with time it'll get easier to do that application as well. Okay, right. So how can we help you? Because we actually try and work with you guys. We don't want to be somebody that stops your business and makes things too difficult. So as I say, if you don't plant passport, we may only come and see you once every 2 years, but we will do this regular visiting. And we will do a surveillance. We'll discuss the current biosecurity issues with quarantine pests and diseases, which I'll come on to. And we can take samples of anything that you're worried about that's diseased or infested. We send these to our laboratories at Farah in York. And again, we can send this for free. So surveillance and sampling are all free. As you know, as much as we can do for you if there's no serious problem on site. Okay, right. So I thought you'd be interested just to hear a little bit about what we look for. I mean, we're happy to give advice on more native problems, but the key things of what we are looking for are not currently in the country. So, or limited. Some of them are regulated, but unlimited. So we'll have a little look at those now, if that's okay. So you've probably heard of this one, the oak processionary moth. So this one is very much native in Central and Southern Europe. The oak trees are the host. It's a threat to human health because if you brush against the caterpillar barbs, then they'll cause a rash on the body. It defoliates the oaks, causing them a great deal of stress and can cause death in severe conditions. And I'm sure you actually know that this one is present actually in London and the surrounding boroughs at the moment. It did reach Cardiff once, but luckily it was spotted quite early on, and it was managed to be the trees that have been recently planted in Cardiff were removed and destroyed. So as far as we're aware, it's still not present in Wales. So the overarching policy with this is to slow the spread of processionary moth and reduce the levels of pest prevalence and protect the oaks. I'll add in there that's actually also a pine processionary moth, which I've not got any photos of, but I was a little bit scared. We were doing a face-to-face with the public at the Glamorgan show, and a lady came up to me, had recently been on holiday in Spain, told me that she'd been sitting under a pine tree and that the pine processionary caterpillars were dropping on her head. So it would cause the same issues. It would defoliate, it would cause impacts to human health. So that one isn't in the country, but it's one that we very much look out for with imported pines at the moment. Another one that would be very obvious if we found it is the citrus longhorn beetle. There's also an Asian longhorn beetle. The body length is about 1 inch long before you even put the antennae on, so they're quite distinctive. They lay eggs in slits at the base of trees, and there are over 70 species of a host tree on that one. So including, as you can see there, citrus, apple, acer, poplar, salix, alder, birch, hazel, oaks, hawthorns and beech. So again, we don't have this in the country. It did get into Kent before my time, so probably about 15 years ago. But on that occasion, it came in pallet wood. And as a subsequent action, after they discovered that pallet wood wasn't treated, I think you'll now find that all pallet wood is heat treated and has an ISPN number stamped on it to show that it has been treated and free from bringing in pests and disease. So yeah, so you can see here, it's very invasive of the tree trunk. The larvae are in there for a long time and they get quite big. And the obvious symptoms of the longhorn beetle are these exit holes, where you get the holes at the base of the trunk where the live beetle comes out. Okay, so this one that we look for very much on imported acers, but anything else that, you know, we do look for these sort of holes in any insect activity, which we quite often see frass, sort of the insect waste at the base of the trunks as well. So yeah, eradication, I think the outbreak in Kent took them several years, because not only did they have to destroy all the trees that they found infected with it at the time, but they had to keep going back to survey the area for several years later. But it was successful. There's a whole range of bacterial diseases which we look out for. So the one on the left is called Xanthomonas arboricola. I'll come back to some of these in more detail. The middle one, fire blight, Erwinia amyotnova, is actually not a quarantine disease anymore. It's what we call a regulated non-quarantine disease. So if we find that in the wider environment, we ask for voluntary destruction of the plants, because it still causes a lot of harm. But yeah, it's pretty much out there in the wider environment now, which is why it's been reduced from quarantine status. And then on the one on the right, Xylella fastidiosa, this is a really serious disease that we're on the lookout for. And I'll just show you a little bit more about that now. Oh, there's some symptoms of bacterial diseases. The dieback, sometimes you'll see the bacterial ooze. You quite often get the leaf spots, but obviously other things can cause these. So we always send our samples to the laboratory. We can, if we sample something, we can suggest what it might be, but we always wait for laboratory backup to give us a proper diagnosis. Right, so if we talk a little bit more about Xylella fastidiosa, so this has really been a very serious disease on mainland Europe, and it's taken out thousands of acres of the olive. And I would say importing olives is probably still one of the most risky things that a business can do. They do come in with permanent labels on now to show that the olives have come in from areas that are not affected by Xylella fastidiosa. But Plant Health are all in dread that this may eventually turn up on our shores, because the bacterial disease has a huge host range of about 150 genera, which includes oaks, lavenders, coffea plants, citrus, elm, if any are surviving, prunus, polygala, nerium, including their rosemaries. Any sort of plant that you can think of that has like a Mediterranean growth habit would be affected by Xylella fastidiosa. It's spread by a leaf hopper. And I would quite like to find out a bit more about the leaf hoppers myself, because there was this spurious article a while ago saying that the leafhoppers that cause cuckoo spit were introducing Xylella. Well, that's not the case. We'd have to have Xylella actually infected in the plants, but then it is those sort of hoppers that do cause cuckoo spit that could do the transferring. So we would have to have a two-pronged attack if this one did manage to get in the country, because we'd have to destroy the plants and we would have to destroy the insects that could be a vector to the disease as well. So yeah, it's a really serious one that we're constantly on the lookout for. So symptoms, Xylella, the name suggests, affects the xylem. So you get the wilting, withering of the branches, the dieback, but you also can see this leaf scorch as well. But the symptoms do vary depending on the host and the degree of susceptibility. Yeah, Hebes is another one actually that would be affected. There's a huge host range with this one. Yeah, it's quite worrying. Right, let's just keep going on that. Right, so another bacterial disease. Now we do see this one from time to time, Xanthomonas arboricola, PV prunei, and usually we see it on imported laurels, either Portuguese laurel or just normal laurel. I've seen it come in from France and Belgium. So hopefully you guys aren't doing too much of that, but it's just something to be aware of. We usually pick it up fairly quickly. It has these distinctive necrotic spots with a halo. And yeah, having said that, there are one or two other diseases. Like there's also a Pseudomonas, which does something similar, which is not quite so devastating. But if we did find this on any imported plants, they get destroyed by burning or deep burial. We did a survey last year to see if it was present in the wider environment, but actually we didn't actually find anything in the wider environment. So at the moment we think we're managing to control it as we see it on the imports, because it's fairly distinctive. Right. Yeah, here's a few more pictures. Of course, all pruners do this shot holing anyway as soon as they get any sort of disease. So you do have to be a bit wary. But if you see the spotting with the chlorotic halo, then that's when we get a little bit more suspicious with it. Okay, right. Then there's another whole range of the fungal diseases. So there's just a few examples there. Sweet chestnut blight, Phytophthora lateralis on cypress. We've just been having a look at some around the Cardiff area that's infected at the moment. Phytophthora canovii. There's also another Phytophthora pluvialis, which got identified about 3 years ago, and they did worry that that was going to become more serious, but it seems to be a fairly slow burner, so it's not causing too much trouble at the moment. The most serious one that we all deal with as plant health inspectors is Phytophthora ramorum, which you may also know as sudden oak death. Though we think this came in about 2002 from California. And interestingly, we think it probably arrived in the country on used farm machinery that hadn't been cleaned properly. So we now actually do inspect farm machinery as it's imported or before it's exported to make sure that diseases like this aren't spread around more. So yeah, it's a horrendous fungal disease. It's got a big species range. Many of you may be aware that it's probably killed most of the larch in Wales. It also affects rhododendron, but from my perspective, it doesn't tend to take out the rhododendron. The rhododendron is a source of inoculum. So if we find that, and we still find it quite regularly in the wider environment, we do issue notices for the destruction of rhododendron harbouring this disease. I've also seen it on camellia. I've seen it on imported camellias and rhododendrons. So we're aware that it keeps coming back into the country from the Netherlands or Belgium, other places. We also look for it on Pyrrhus, Vaccinium, beech. There aren't really many larch left to look at, sadly. Interestingly, although it came in as called sudden oak death, we haven't found it to be a very serious problem on oak. Because they found that the American oaks have a different genetic constitution. So the English oak, touch wood, are not suffering too much with this at the moment, but we do keep an eye out for it just in case anything changes, because obviously all these diseases could mutate and become more serious on different host plants. Right. So symptoms, you'll see, particularly on rhododendron, you'll see the wilting. You'll get some sort of lesions, dark lesions that will probably go up the midrib of the leaf and cause blackened stems, blackened cankers, and necrosis. Very occasionally, you might see a weeping canker, but I personally haven't seen anything like that. I think that's quite unusual. You'll see it more on the rhododendrons with this sort of dieback. Then we've got a whole range of viral diseases. Okay. Luckily, not so many on trees, it has to be said. Apart from the one in the bottom right-hand corner, the plum pox, also there is another one, elm yellows, phytoplasma. So, but a lot of them affect more the produce. The elm yellows, we see this, we often call it like witch's broom with the phytoplasmas, where they become a lot more bushy than you'd expect them to. Instead of having like a lead stem, you'll see all side shoots coming out of it. So that I have seen that occasionally, but not a lot. And then the plum pox, if we have a look at that, it's one of the most serious of the plant viral diseases. It can affect a lot of plums, damsons, green gages, etc. Reduces the fruit yields by 20 to 30%. And there are no really effective control measures. So we rely on certified planting material, removal of host plants around, and control of aphids that might spread the viruses. And if you're actually involved in selling any sort of prunus purely for fruit production, there are quite a lot of checks that have to be done. And if we found this virus, you wouldn't be allowed to sell. So, yeah. But again, not too common in Wales, I don't think. I don't see it very well. So there's just a little bit more information about the viruses and how some of the symptoms that you see. I mean, tomatoes are something that we work on a lot. So something to be aware of, and we do surveys around that as well. If anybody wants to know more about any of these, just ask me at the end, and I can provide a bit more information. So along with looking for the serious pests and diseases, just things that you can do to be more biosecure at your nurseries. Hopefully you're all aware of these things. But cleaning and disinfecting your tools between different tasks, cleaning your equipment, your footwear. We always clean our footwear between different sites so that we can't carry anything from one site to another. It's a good idea to spring clean your greenhouses, your water butts, just to make sure you're not harbouring anything. Regularly monitor the health of your plants. I mean, if it's not something that you recognise, then please do give us a shout, because we're happy to come and sample, as I've said before. If you bring in plants from another site, I would recommend you having a quarantine area so that they can be just checked out for maybe a month or so to make sure they're not going to bring something in onto your nursery site. I would encourage biodiversity. Monoculture is the worst thing for spreading pests and diseases, so a little bit more variety. If you have different batches of the same plants, then mix them up so you don't have all the same species together. And biosecure the waste disposal. So that's quite important. We recommend disposal actually by burning. Sometimes you have to have a special license to do that, but I think in Wales generally, because we're not in an urban area, things can be burnt without causing other people too much of a disruption. The alternatives are to make sure they go to a deep burial site, one of your local authority sites, so that can be done as well. You can see here, sometimes foot mats are recommended. I think that's quite good with disinfectant on. If you think there's a risk of phytophthora in your area, they're definitely a good idea. And just keeping everything clean that's on site. It's really sensible. Oh yeah, compost heaps. Please don't put anything with any disease symptoms into your compost heap. Don't spread chippings from infected or symptomatic trees. I mean, we don't visit specifically for ash dieback anymore, but I was a bit horrified the other day. Somebody told me that they'd taken an infected ash tree down and then were using the chippings to spread around the site. Not a good idea. It's just going to perpetuate the problem. And you'd be better just burning it and getting rid of the disease. Okay. Okay, yeah, again, just more washing and disinfecting. Can't say it enough, really. It's the best thing for you to do if you're growing trees or plants for sale. Right, nearly there. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the other schemes which sometimes get confused with ourselves. Right, so okay, so the first one, not to get confused with ourselves actually, this one's just to make sure you all know about, if you're collecting your own seeds and cuttings, that you should really be registered with FRM, which is Forest Reproductive Materials. This isn't always required, but it's still quite a good idea. Let me just talk a bit more about that. So it applies if you sell or give away trees, and the definition is for forestry purposes, which is defined as woodland planting of 0.25 hectares or more than 15 meters width with a 20% canopy. But actually, I think it's actually quite good practice to register with FRM if you're collecting seeds, because it makes sure that you keep a record of where you've collected the seed. And again, if there's any problem with it in the future, not only do we know where it was collected from, but we can go back to the source and also sample and see if there are problems that we weren't aware of. So I would say that you should actually be using this if you're collecting seed for any purpose, including amenity, conservation, or enhancement. Right, this is a one that we're often confused with. So there's a voluntary scheme called Plant Healthy, and community tree nurseries may wish to join this scheme, but it is entirely separate from the Plant Health Inspectorate, and it shouldn't be confused with APHA and plant passporting. I understand it costs thousands of pounds to have an audit from Plant Healthy. And I say we are free for registration, so we can almost do the same thing for free there. Plant passporting, as I've pointed out, is just a few £100s. So, yeah, as a lot of people, I still go around and still say, oh, you cost thousands of pounds for plant passporting. No, we don't. Please spread the word. I'd rather you came to us first. Some of the bigger organisations like mailers and what have you obviously have gone down this route because they can afford to. But in the first instance, just make sure you're registered with ourselves. So this is a new one. I only came across this last week. And I need to check it out with my plant passporting manager where he sits with this. But it's the Woodland Trust UK ISG, which stands for the UK and Ireland Sourced and Grown Assurance Scheme. So this again is a voluntary scheme. You might get the same auditors as you would get for Plant Healthy, but then it would give you some accreditation with Woodland Trust to provide trees for planting in their schemes. So as I say, I've just heard of that one recently. It doesn't cost thousands of pounds either, apparently. It just costs I don't know. You'd have to check it out, but I think
I don't think it costs anything at all currently.
Right. Okay.
And it is the Woodland Trust owned scheme. It's open to other people, but if you are planning to sell or give or grow any trees for Woodland Trust, you have to have UKISG. It's kind of speaking to people who have both Plant Healthy and UKISG. It's a kind of it's not as onerous. It's almost quite a nice entry level scheme, if you like. Plant Healthy is, as you said, it is really quite expensive. It's the very few small or community nurseries can afford it, and it's in Wales. This hasn't come in yet, but there are for England, Scotland in particular. If you are most local authorities and government planting schemes, if you are wanting to supply any trees into those schemes, you have to have Plant Healthy currently. And like if it's a grant funded planting scheme, you have to be Plant Healthy in England and Wales, in England and Scotland, not in Wales currently. I think if they were to introduce that into Wales, there would have to be support for nurseries to be able to afford the cost of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I butted in there just because
it's good to know a little bit more about that. But I certainly know that one or two of my clients have joined this Woodland Trust UK ISG recently for the purpose of selling the trees into the Woodland Trust.
So Ridian, who's here on the course, I think his nursery is UK ISG certified.
There we are. Yeah. Good to know.
Last year, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, good to know it's not quite as expensive as well.
Not as expensive, and it's a bit more, it's more light touch, if you like, than Plant Healthy. But as you say, you would likely get the same auditors for both, because I know that Amanda, who does our biosecurity training courses, who should be doing the one at Platanable next Friday, she's a UKISG and Plant Healthy auditor. So she does the both at the same time. But you can get, if you just UKISG, you're likely to get somebody from the Woodland Trust call-off list rather than somebody who's both does both things, apparently. Sorry, I'll shut that now.
No, it sounds about right. What was I going to say? Yeah. Yeah, the interesting thing I think is that actually the people who have been audited have then come back to me, the ones I know, and asked for some confirmation to give to the UK ISG that they are registered with Plant Health. So it comes back to us again. You still need to show that you are actually registered with us first and foremost. Right, just another couple. There's also, we have the invasive non-native team. So if anybody's interested in that, we've got Conor O'Donoghue in Wales. So he's available to come and talk to you about any risks with competitions of non-natives with our own natives. Okay, so that was just a little heads up on that. And just acknowledgements, yeah, FERA for taking our samples, DEFRA, our parents, Animal and Plant Health Agency, and then there are the names of the 4 key inspectors. I say it's myself, Gareth and Molly in South Wales, and Lauren in North Wales. So if you want any of their contact details, let me know. And thank you for listening, and any questions?
So we have randomly somebody just entered the waiting room. I'm not sure. I might have to just send her a private message. Yes, so there's Tom has asked a few questions. He's asked in terms of biosecurity. I think so. Tom is based near Cardigan. So I think is that your area? Would that be you?
Yeah.
Tom's based near Cardigan. He's just starting up a tree nursery or just planning to with a friend of his. And he says, in terms of biosecurity, in our tree nursery, we were thinking of planting in rows ordered in terms of tree species and FRM registration dates, etc. Would it be better to separate these out to stop the spread of diseases and just label them really well?
Personally, I would say yes. I would mix it up a bit more. You obviously keep your batches together, but I wouldn't have, say you're growing, I don't know, let's just say you're growing Crataegus for the sake of it. If you have a collection and grow 1 year, then don't put that to the collection that you get the next year. I would put them at a different point around the nursery. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Thomas also asked if you could quickly explain face-to-face selling. In which circumstances wouldn't you have to register with APHA? Is it just selling at a small scale?
No, again, you always have to register, but the plant passporting, you don't have to do that if you're selling at the gate, or if you're selling at a market stall, or if you're doing click and collect.
Thank you. Is there anything else anybody would like to ask? If you actually, if we close the, if you stop sharing, Carolyn, we'll be able to see everybody, and then people can just stick their hands up if they've got a question, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's. Oh, I know. I've got to come out, haven't I? Right. Okay. And then I've got to get back to you. How do I get back to you?
You just stop sharing. If you just stop sharing, go to the share thing on that bit. Share. Click on the little arrow. Oh, does it not say stop sharing?
Oh, it doesn't say stop sharing. Why does it not say stop sharing?
Let me just see if I can. Let me see if I can boot you off.
Yeah, boot me off. That's fine.
Oh, how odd.
Oh, hang on. I found something now. It was, there we go. There we go.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, I've got one, if that's okay. So Welsh Water have got a target of, off the top of my head, 200,000 trees in the next 5 years to plant. We're looking at setting up our own nursery to provide those trees, and we were going to collect seeds from our own sites. So would that require, I mean, obviously we'd look at getting registered and FRM, but would it need a plant passport if we're only providing internal? We're not selling to other people, we're not selling to other councils or private, we're just providing trees to our own land holdings.
Well, I think in theory you probably don't need to plant passport, but it would still be good practice to keep
That's fine. It's just,
yeah.
I'm just wondering if that is a requirement or not. That's all. Okay.
Yeah, I can check because sometimes there's a distance thing as well. So if you had your nursery down in South Wales or wherever, and then you were going to supply up to North Wales, there's also a distance thing in because you can go outside 10 miles. So I can check that one for you.
Thank you.
Do that. Okay.
So anybody else have a question? Want to jump in?
I'd just be interested to get Lauren's contact us.
Yeah. Okay. Where are you based?
Porthmadog.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Where is she based? Where's Lauren based? Is she?
She's actually closer to Oswestry, but she's quite happy to come over. It's fine.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So, how am I going to do that then?
If you just want to send me the contact for all of them.
Yeah. And then
are you happy for me to just send them out with the details?
Yeah, will do.
And you said that the initial meeting is a free one, but then the follow-up meeting. Who decides on the follow-up? Do you decide on the follow-ups, or do we decide? Is it best practice to have one every year, or is it best practice to have one every 6 months? So how does it work?
It depends on the size of the nursery, to be perfectly honest. But Lauren would do one at least once a year, and she would decide. And it's best to come in the summer if you're going to try and combine the growing season and the annual records assessment. Yeah. But I say summer or late summer. So I tend to do trees August, September, October.
Hey, how are we doing have we got anybody else who's shocked everybody into silence, maybe?
Thinking about it now.
I think that the message really is that the plant health staff, they're there to help you, be able to do things safely and better, and that's what we all want. So it's just worth contacting your local plant health person for a chat and to arrange a visit as soon as, really. Just it's part of the process of making sure that the trees that we plant are as healthy as possible.
I'll just quickly. We've bought some seeds from Forest Start last year for the first time, and we've growing them on in a tree nursery down in Pembrokeshire. Trees for Tomorrow. I don't know if you're aware of this site.
Yeah, that's Jonathan's. Yeah.
And then the plan is to bring those as they're already in one growing season up to about 40 centimeters height in a cell, so that we're going to bring them up to our nursery in North Wales, where we will put them in our most likely in our depot to quarantine them. But
it's breaking up a bit.
Yeah, we've lost you, Iridian.
I know that
do you decide to grow them on into a slightly bigger tree, because that's what we're aiming for in the end, is do we passport for the growing on bit, passports from Forest Start? I mean, when if we grow them on for the 12 months in our nursery, do we need a new plant passport at all? Because we'll be doing the growing on bits, you mean?
But so for instance, you just mentioned Jonathan at Trees for Tomorrow. So he plant passports. So he will send the trees from his nursery to you with his plant passport. It depends where they're going to go after you've grown them on.
Okay, most likely into some sort of a national park hedgerow scheme, to be honest, but they're all hedgerow plants. You mean so?
But you probably should plant passport again, just to increase that flexibility.
That came up in the order that if we're doing this, we need to think about having another plant passport.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
I thought initial one would be enough. I mean, but I can discuss this if we get.
You get Lauren on site and she can take a look at what's going on site. That'll be fine. Yeah, we'll do.
Thanks.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, I hope that was useful. This is the first one of Karen's that I've sat in on. So yeah, it was interesting for me as well. But if you've got no more questions, nobody wants to jump in. As I said, best thing to do is just contact your local person, have a chat. And please do, I've put the link to the feedback form there in the chat as well. If you could fill that in for us, that'd be amazing, just so as we know how we develop our kind of support workshops and sessions into the future. That would be great. And yeah, the only other thing left to say is thanks, Karen, for taking the time to talk to us today. It all helps with spreading the word about best practice and what people should be doing. And yeah, as just to mention as well, so the courses, for people that don't know, the community courses do cover, we've got a seed collection and seed processing one that does cover FRM and when you need it, and when, you know, all of the legislation is about that. And there's we've got having a networking day next Friday at Ridian's Nursery, which is looking at biosecurity in depth as well, and doing biosecurity risk assessments for nurseries. So it's kind of, we're trying to cover all the different things that you need. If you miss some of the online sessions, we have been recording them, and they'll be available on YouTube once we figure out how to do the technical bit about adding. We're a bit stumped at the moment because we need to add a thank you to funders slide at the end of it, and it's a bit beyond my capabilities. I've got to have somebody else to help me do it, but they will be available shortly. But yes, it's always worth trying to do one of the in-person events as well, because you actually get to talk in depth to other nurseries and people who are doing it and share experiences. So I'm sure now that if you're not already, we'll pop you on the mailing list and you'll be getting invitations to future events. Were you about to say something, Ridian? You looked like you had a...
No, I'm just nodding. It's been really useful. Thank you, Dale.
Good.
Okay. Right. Well, if that's... Well, Jane will be sending, probably next Monday, out the recording from today with the notes. Is it possible to send the slides out as well, Carmen?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll send you an email with all the contact details. I'll also send the link if anybody wants to register online, and I'll send you the link to the presentation. Is that okay?
Perfect. That'd be great. And we'll send that around to everybody in the next couple of days. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll see some of you soon.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.